I bake my own bread. Yes, I am outing myself as a baker, as someone who likes to cook. I'm not a woman. I am ultra masculine, as you can see, but baking and cooking in general is a scientific thing. And men like scientific things. I used to be a scientist, and baking my own bread, which I'm going to show you how, is one of the most joyful things that I can do at home. And the only thing more joyful is eating freshly baked bread to coming home to a house that smells like a bakery. So I'm going to tell you exactly why I make my own bread and how you can do so too. The problem with store-bought bread is many. First, it's expensive. If you live in the United States, to buy a good loaf of fresh bread is $4 to $6. It isn't cheap, and also may have shady ingredients that you just don't want, various preservatives that you don't want. I mean, that's why you can take a loaf of bread, stick it on the counter, and it's good for weeks. And bread shouldn't be that way. You should start to get stale within a few days and moldy within a week. But bread you buy, because of all the chemicals that they put, it stays good seemingly forever, like a McDonald's package of French fries. Also, they load bread with a lot of sugar and salt. Sugar especially, I don't really want that much sugar in the bread, but to make the bread tasty, they add a lot of that stuff. So I want more control over the ingredients that go in the bread that I'm eating. And also, it's not as fresh. I mean, they bake it in their factory bakery, and by the time it gets to your home, many days have passed. You open it, you open the package, and you're not really hit with that bakery freshness and goodness. So this is the problem that I was experiencing, and I wanted to solve it. And to solve it, I look back to 2009 when I had a roommate in Medellin, Colombia. And this man, he was actually a German man. He had a bread machine. And when I first moved in with him, I was like, bread machine? That's retarded. You can just go to the supermarket and buy it. But then when he showed me what this bread machine was capable of, I was so sold on it that I never forgot it. And I said, when I am a little bit stable in my life, I am going to buy one. And finally, 7 years later, I have reached a period of stability where I bought a bread machine for only $50. So it was actually cheap. And if you go on sites like Amazon.com, you can find one that is not expensive either. So I bought it, and my life has completely changed. I bake bread every 4 days. And if you're a genuine baker, I know you're thinking right now that using a bread machine is like a shortcut, and it is, but still technically I am baking my own bread, and the result is really the same, if not better, if I manually did it in my own oven. Not only is it really easy to make, as I will show you, but the quality is great. You're using ingredients that you control. You can decide how much sugar and salt and things like that you want to put. You can do white or wheat. It's cheap as hell, man. I can make bread all day for everyone, and it's still way less than if I were to go in the store and buy it. So all the problems I had with bread have been solved by this $50 machine right here that I'm going to dive into right now. The bread machine I use is a Sencor. This is a basic generic brand in Europe. And as you can see, it's just a bread pan with a kneading blade that goes inside of it. And the kneading blade is what actually stirs and mixes the bread. And inside the bread machine is a heating element. So really the bread machine is just something that will stir the bread, a heating element, and that's it. And it has a program, so you can do various things if you want to make sweet breads or wheat breads or things such as that. So it's a really simple machine that is not complicated. That's why the cost of it is pretty low. So today we're going to make a white bread loaf. And I sometimes switch between wheat and white. Today is going to be white. So let's just dive in. Let's just start and do it, and you'll see how quick this is. The first step is I add two spoons of olive oil, and the oil keeps it moist. It really slows down the staleness process and also gives it a richer taste. I then add 330 milliliters of lukewarm water. And water, obviously, you need water for bread. And I heat it just for a minute on the stovetop to ensure that it is warm. But if you have a microwave, you can do it that way too. Make sure it's not too hot because then you're going to kill the yeast. Next up, we got to feed the yeast. And if you don't know, yeast is the organism that creates the holes in the bread, makes it light. But they need food, and the food for yeast is sugar. So I put 18 grams total of sugar. And then, of course, the most important ingredient is the flour. I put 500 grams, and as you can see, I'm weighing everything. So if I make a good batch of bread, I really want to be able to duplicate it. So when you weigh it, you get the most precise measuring possible so that you can easily duplicate anything. Now there's various types of bread. In Europe, I'm using type 550. In the US, we don't really have numbered types of flour. So you can stick to all-purpose flour. I think that should be fine. It's about the same grain type. So I would go for 500, all-purpose flour. And if you can find a specific bread flour in your supermarket, that can be worth a try too. I mean, you are going to try different types of flour anyway, so you might as well just start with the basic one, all-purpose flour, since you can find that anywhere. Next up is the yeast. I added 4.5 grams of yeast, and this is actually too much, and you'll see why in the result when we are done. So the yeast, this is of course instant yeast, so it's not the moist, wet yeast. This is the stuff that comes in the dry packaging. And lastly, we add salt, and salt is just for taste, and I'm adding 3.1 grams of salt. You dump all the ingredients into the baking pan, which already has the kneading blade inside. So always put the kneading blade in first. Dump all the ingredients in, and the measurements that I gave you total up to give us a 900 gram loaf. So I put on the 900 gram loaf setting. You have two options, light crust or dark crust. I do a light crust because a dark crust can get a little bit hard. And I use their main program. This is number 1. And the bread machines have been out for a long time. So basically all the bread machines are almost exactly the same. They use a standard pan size. So I'm pretty confident that the bread machine you have is going to have a similar setting. You push the button, and 3 hours later, you open the top and you got bread. I mean, that's it. That's all it takes. And to mix all the ingredients, if I'm doing it really slow, like watching a YouTube video while I'm doing it, it takes about 15 minutes to put all the ingredients and to clean up. I mean, this is fast. You can do it faster. I mean, you can do it, when you're on your way out, you just want to get a quick loaf in 10 minutes flat, boom. You put it all, push the button, and then you go out, do whatever you need. And 3 hours after that, you come home to what smells like a bakery, and your bread is completely done. It's a white. Now you see there is a problem. My bread, it cratered a bit. So the middle came down, and from the research I've been doing online, it's either because there's too much water or too much yeast. So for the next loaf, I decided to lower the yeast amount to 3 grams instead of 4.5. And I'll just show a picture of how the next one looks. So you can see now the top is flat, but I still want that rounded top. So I'm probably going to even lower the yeast a little bit more. But this is the fun of baking. It's science. So you change one thing each time and see what the result is. This is very similar to when I used to work as a scientist in 2 biotech firms. I would actually make food for microbial and mammalian cells, and I would change one thing to see the effects of the food, how the yeast would actually grow, because I grew yeast cells. And this is almost exact same thing, except I can eat the product after that. And so as you can see, my excitement for growing bread is really high because it's cool. It's a good way to also challenge myself in a bit. I mean, it's not a big challenge, but you can see, can I make a good loaf? Can I take a basic recipe and tweak it so that it turns out great. And the people who have been eating the bread I make, they say it tastes great, and I'm really happy about that. And I enjoy it too. I make sandwiches every day. I mean, I'm all carved out, man. I'm all carved out because of this great bread that I'm now able to make at home. To clean up is very simple. All you have to do is soak the pan to loosen the kneading blade inside so it can pop out. You just use very mild soap to clean the pan. I use a Q-tip to clean the hole in the kneading blade to get all the bread out. And that's it. That's it. I mean, it's really, really easy. You know, I bought a bread knife and a bread cover, and those are cheap. So I always have a supply. If you come to my house right now, there is bread for you to eat. I'm sure the next person who does come to my house after watching this is going to ask for that sweet bread, and I'll be happy to share because you know, I'm starting to enter a more natural way of living. I bake my own cookies now. I'm looking at starting a garden too, and not because I really think that the food in the supermarket is horrible and bad, but I just want to be closer to the things that I'm putting inside me. I want to be you know, I want to feel what it's like to live in a natural way, maybe how we used to live when we used to grow our own food, we used to raise our own pigs and things like that. It's kind of nice to take one step closer to the food that I eat. And this is a small way of doing that. And who knows, maybe I'll stop here. Maybe just making bread will be it. Or maybe I'll decide to move out of the city, go to a more suburban or rural place where I can have a plot of land, maybe have a couple of animals, chickens and stuff like that. Because I mean, it's nice to live in a city and, you know, have all these options, entertainment, cafes and stuff. But at the same time, it's kind of nice to use your own hands to make good food and to share that food with other people. So I think you're going to start to see more of that from me. So in conclusion, I highly recommend you get a bread machine and go at it, have fun. I maintain a journal. Every time I change something, I write it down, then I make some notes on what effect my change had, whether it's adding yeast or taking away yeast. So make sure you have a log of what you're doing and enjoy the journey. I mean, obviously, I would love a perfect recipe of bread. I would love that. But to me, it's not about that. It's about the joy of cooking and the joy of changing things to see what actually happens. You know, you have to value the journey as much as the destination. So when I make my bread, that is what I do. It's just a fun thing that I like, that brings joy to me. And I think it'll bring joy to you too. So go out there, get a bread machine. I shared the recipe, the white bread recipe that I use down below in the comments so you can get started. And I hope it works. Let me know what your recipe is like or if you develop your own. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this clip. If you like it, be sure to leave me a comment to let me know what you think. Until next time.